when you're there, but the DM is just playing with himself. Like, literally, when it's their characters that they wrote.
What?
And hello and welcome to the DiceBound Podcast. This is Adaece. I'm here joined by my co-hosts Rath and Pickles. This is the podcast portion of the show where we'll be taking a look under the table and behind the DM screen to discuss topics related to TTRPGs to help improve your and strengthen your TTRPG experience. So, without further ado, let's roll. Our topic today is one that I'm sure many of you strive for, and a lot of us would like to repeat to achieve consistency with. And that topic is what makes a good session. Are there certain qualities, activities, or actions that can distinguish a good session from a potentially lukewarm one? I think many of us has walked away from at least one session that we can think of where we think, man, that was a good session. But what really made it a good session? I would like to first bounce this off of Pickles to see what his thoughts are on what makes a good session.
I think there's three things that I would identify as being the most consistent factors of a really fun type of session. The first is challenge. I've never played in a game where you just kind of don't do anything and there's no risk and there's no challenge with anything. There's nothing really to do. I've never played in a game like that where I'm like, oh, that was fun. It's a reason why people are often like, a shopping episode is necessary sometimes, but it's not stellar. Most people, I think, would say that it's not as fun. So challenge is necessary to make an adventure or a session actually interesting, but you also need a reward. Like if you're risking everything, there has to be some sort of gain or change or anything that makes it you feel as if you spent your time wisely rather than just sitting around rolling dice for hours. I think reward can be in a lot of different forms for different players. Some people will be like, I made a new friend, and that's a reward. Others might be like, well, I didn't gain any more money or power. That's not a reward. And the system usually will like show you how to reward your players. But the third element that is important for a stellar game session, I believe, is some sort of investment in the setting. Something that makes you go, wow, I really like this place, or I want to see this story out further. Something where you can get kind of attached and grow with this fictional area. Because that's sort of the goal, I guess, is to be in a fictional place. And the more you feel that, the better the session generally goes.
That's a great point. And I mean, a lot of people have that wanting to tie in their character into the world, and the more you do that, I think, the more of a good session, the better a session becomes. Rath, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I think the big critical part of that would be the balance of the three. And if you have too much of one, not enough of another, it's going to fall apart. And so what I see a lot of people do with TTRPGs is combat. So you've got your challenge, absolutely. People will throw a combat in. Why did you have that fight? What did you get from it? You get some loot, some money, okay. What was the value in that challenge that is going to reward your players so that they feel the investment from it? A huge reason why I personally advise to avoid random encounters. I don't think they add the value that equates to the challenge presented. And so I agree with Pickles. I think that is a huge part of what will make your session. I think it's the balance of those three that is going to really solidify it, if that helps any DMs out there.
Yeah, and as a DM, Pickles, like what are some of the things that you try to do to make that feel rewarding for the players when you get into that situation where you want to give them that reward, give them that feeling of this is a good session, I've done something?
That is the ever-present problem that you're trying to solve, I think, as a storyteller, of what actually feels rewarding to the players. How do you make them have fun?
The big question.
At gunpoint.
Yeah.
No. I think it's learning who your players are, really. You can do broad strokes rewards, like, hey, we had a combat encounter, now you gain experience points. That'll get closer to a level up. I think a lot of people respond well to that. But as Rath said, sometimes it isn't just about, oh, well, we got more numbers. We got more gold coins, and we fought these goblins that didn't matter, and now we're better, technically. As I said, learning your players and what they enjoy, you might find your players are like, yeah, I just like killing things. That's not weird to say. And you might find other players who respond better to getting a flower crown from a local granny in a village. Like, being able to connect with characters is another powerful one, I think, of being told, you've done well by just fictional characters. I think that's a reward in of itself for certain players. I know as a wizard, I've always been fascinated by the going on a quest to find a new spell book and just learn new spells. That's just something that personally for me is like, ooh, that's exciting. I don't know why, but that's super cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. That you can kind of, it doesn't have to be the numbers game of trying to build up a higher number, but it could be more of incorporating into the story. And so with that, Rath, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, like, what are some things that would make a good session in your book?
Yeah, so I was discussing with Mr. Pickles here before recording, trying to narrow in my thoughts, and I think the big thing that brought me to my decision was, if I play in a session, what is going to make or break that session? Like, if it has this feature, this factor, it would be good. And if it doesn't have it, it would be bad. And I think the big thing for me was player agency. And this is, I should say, this is speaking primarily as a player, but in my most recent big time campaign of King's Crossing, which I think we've got like 42 episodes in season 1 done. So in that time as a DM, I learned that I really love player agency from a DM side as well. And what I mean by that, let me first address what player agency is for anyone who's confused. So player agency is just giving some leeway for your players to write in the book. So say I've made this whole novel, leaving blank pages for your players to write. Sometimes you'll get gold. Sometimes you'll get some stuff that you might need to work around as a DM. There is now a character in King's Crossing who is called a bear, who is a chef in a foreign land, who apparently made little sweet treats for an ogre. I didn't write that. There is an ongoing grand scale war between dwarves and goats. I didn't write that. so you'll never know what you're gonna get sometimes, but I think for me it's what really makes or breaks a session, in that if you, I'll speak from both sides. So as a DM, I wrote out King's Crossing, made a whole campaign, and what I did is the whole way I was able to build this whole campaign is on a framework. I don't know the technical name for it. I call it a framework. So what I did is I made, like, say you're building a building, maybe a skyscraper. I built all the pillars, the beams that are going to hold it all together. But how it gets furnished, what color it gets painted, where the windows go, how the doors get put in, where the stairs are at on each level, is kind of just written between myself and the players. To where, if I ran King's Crossing, and actually I can do this, I run King's Crossing with 2 different groups. Both groups are designing the floors entirely different. Where one group brings in a little kobold named Dibs who likes to cuss. The other group throw him out. So it really gives replayability, or just differing points of view. And a big part of that is reflecting on the player's side. So before we get any feedback, I'll let you guys talk here. I'll promise. On the player side, this goes back to what Pickles was saying. Pickles said a huge part of the challenge and the reward is giving your players that investment. Player agency is another big way to do that. One of our players, Fred, in King's Crossing, is playing Torvekic, a dwarf man-at-arms. And a huge part of his story is he was in the war with goats. And so that is a huge part of his character and what built him into who he is now. And so that kind of explains why his character acts the way he acts. But it gives the players that investment where they're like, hey, I helped build this. I'm invested. You know, it's not just like, am I invested in the Walmart that I just walk into and get groceries and walk out of? No, I didn't build that. I don't care about Walmart. Like, if somebody robbed Walmart, I'd be like, oh no. Okay, so anyways, you know, but if someone robs my house, if someone walked into my room and took my stuff, I'd be like, hey. I wouldn't just be like, oh no, dang it. Anyways, so it gives you that investment where players are like, wait, I'm connected to this world. Like, I personally have words on this page in this book. And so that to me is the big difference between a good game and a bad game, is if you got to put your character in the world.
And with that player agency, is as a DM, is there like a limit that you have to kind of like rein in there, or is that just I know that we're probably thinking of the same instance right now, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yes, there is. I think,
where does the yes and end and the yes but start taking over?
Yeah, you have to have respectful players. This doesn't just work with anyone. If you have chaotic players who go above and beyond and take it too far, like, rein them in. As the DM, you're in control of the situation. For example, if you guys, you know, to help any DMs out there, you wrote this book. You've got start, you've got end, you've got the cover, you know, you've got this book. If they start writing novel 2, or just like a fan fiction of this book, or, you know, a spin-off series, like, no, we're in this book. Let's keep it here. For example, in a past game, not King's Crossing, not one of my more recent works, in a past game, I started a campaign, and I was like, hey, here's the premise of the campaign. I can't remember. I think it was a nautical, naval island hopping campaign. And it was within this very specific setting, like a very specific sea. There was very specific factions, and this is what was going on. And I don't remember. We'll say I had 4 players. I don't remember, but 3 of these players came, made their characters, inserted them in the world. You know, it worked. The 4th character was like, I'm a necromancer who serves a dark lord from another land, and my entire purpose is to go over there and deal with that. And I was like, that has nothing to do with the game. Like, that player agency doesn't work for what we're doing here. So in that system, I would say it's taken too far. However, I wrote up a big evil bad guy, and this is where I'm sure you were thinking of the same thing. I wrote up this big bag. There was a whole surprise moment, which, long story short, I think kind of fell short and didn't work very well in the episodes, but you'll have to go watch King's Crossing to find out. So that led up to him being revealed, this person being revealed as a big bad. When my players finally went to go face this big bad, I had a whole, like, maybe couple episodes planned for like how this was going to go, the things that would be going on around. There was elements in effect, there was terrain effects in effect, there was a ritual in place that was ongoing, and it was all done. My players just ran in and knocked him out and dragged him out of his ritual, and he wasn't able to do any of the things that were in place, and it just kind of happened that way. And sometimes, you know, they took actions to change the entire course of my plot, but it worked. Like, I'm not going to say no. Like, in that instance, you're not writing a new book. You're not closing my book and going off to watch a movie or something. You're still in the book. You're still adding to its pages. So in that instance, I would say yes, and is appropriate. So If I had to define the line between I would say as long as you feel it still fits in your book, it's acceptable. It might not be the line you would write. It might not be the page you thought would go there. But as long as it still fits in your book, you can work with it.
Yeah. And I think that that's another topic that we could spend an entire session on, just discussing that player agency feature that is a feature of tabletop RPGs. It's something that's going to happen, and as a DM, you're just going to have to come up with solutions for it. But along that point, I think that it does really improve the session dynamics if your players do feel like they have that impact in the world. And that kind of comes to what I was thinking of when I thought of a good session, and that is both the player and the DM should walk away with a feeling of, we had an engaging story with a worthwhile reward at the end of it. Now, with that being said, the ways that you come to that engaging story and reward are, there's many ways to come to that conclusion, but one of the things that I've seen personally work really well is just having engaged players that are invested, like Pickles was talking about, invested in that story. And that's a part of that, the good player that Rath is talking about there, where you have somebody who's invested in the story that they're trying to tell, as well as the one that the DM is trying to tell. Trying to incorporate and mesh those two together, I think, is a huge part of coming away with a good session at the end of the day. Now, everybody has that aspect of like what it, and then kind of going back to Pickles' topic of like, what is the good reward? And I think that you could do it with something as simple as a loot reward or as a experience reward, but also I personally feel that improving upon the lore of the environment is also another great way to reward your players. Like, even if you're doing that running around town episode where you're just going and buying stuff from shops, finding out, going to the antiquarium to get more information, just getting that reward of, hey, you've gone and done a bit more investigation, here's a tidbit more of knowledge that I can give you as the DM for doing that extra step. I know a lot of times people will walk away from those sort of, like, say, situations thinking like, I don't feel like I did anything this episode. But I think that kind of falls then back on the DM to be like, okay, you were doing this the entire time. You may have had these unknown circumstances happen to you, but also you've had these lore drops happen while you were doing that. So building out that world, building the story together, I think is really the core of what we're talking about here when it comes to a good session. Now, Rath did touch up on this, though. What do you guys think makes for a bad session? I mean, the many of us have also gone through and experienced something that we walk away from and say, okay, that was a pretty rough session. We need to maybe improve upon that next week. Pickles, what are some, like, really, like, not good sessions that you've been a part of?
A lot. Well, I guess the one that stands out as most common in my mind, and there's no better way to put it, when you're there but the DM is just playing with himself. Like, literally, when it's their characters that they wrote.
What?
When it's their characters that they wrote and they're like, see how cool my character is? You guys are just here, but my character is winning. And it's just like, okay, why are we here? Why are we watching you play your original character for us? Like, that's the most common one, when it's clear you're not really involved. You're just there as the audience for the main story to happen. That's, like, the worst, because there's no challenge, no reward, and no investment when it's like all the setting is look how cool this character is.
Yeah, for sure. That's always that's always a rough point of contention where you are fighting with a DM that wants to control the entire storyline. Um, that can be rough. And Rath, do you have any? I mean, you touched on it a little bit there, but do you have any that really stand out as like some really bad sessions that you've maybe been a player as a part of?
I mean, the easy answer would be a game where I don't have player agency. I've left games like that where no one else really knew why I left. It was just kind of, hey, I'm stepping back. You guys can continue on. Obviously, have fun, but I'm parting ways. It was usually because of my thoughts on player agency. But I feel like that's the easy answer for anyone watching. I want to give you more value to this podcast, so I'm going to give you another option here, another idea. Spotlight. Player spotlight specifically, which kind of goes in with what Pickles said again. Pickles was saying that the DM's hogging the spotlight to showcase his own stuff, right? I think players hogging spotlight, and I've seen this in two forms. One, the obvious one, where players want to talk through the whole thing and they interrupt other people's turns, or, oh, here's what I want to do, and it's like, it's not even your turn, shut up. There's a lot of that. The other one, and this is one that is a personal, I know a lot of DMs don't feel this way and are okay with this. Too many players, too much player spotlight. You know, if you have 10 players trying to share the spotlight between 10 different people in a 1, 2, 3, 4 hour segment is tough. And as a player, I felt it. To where I've been in games with 6 players and I'm like, I haven't said a thing the entire time. Like, I haven't done an action the entire time we've been. It's been 3 hours and I haven't done anything, but you don't even notice because there's 7 people at the table all contributing, except there's no chance for me to, so I didn't say anything. And then lo and behold, it gets to the end of the session, and that's one of those ones where I walked away going, I didn't do anything. So that's my personal one that I would throw in there. I think I've set a limit. I've played in a game with 6 players and it was too much. Personally, I think 3 to 4 players is my sweet spot that I personally love. That gives me room to run games for 2 players, and that gives me room to run for games for 5 players, like kind of that plus or minus 1. But 3 to 4 would be my sweet spot. And that's my hot take for you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Rath's hot take, TTRPG games with 3 to 4 players is the perfect amount. You can go plus or minus 1, 5 to 2 players, but 3 to 4 is your sweet spot. That's where you're going to succeed. Now you know.
Yeah. Rath's hot take. I mean, I agree. It takes a very, very experienced DM to be able to try to.
You just gotta get good.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
You just gotta get good.
If you were a good DM, okay.
No, there's a lot more planning that has to take place to be able to share the spotlight more than 5 people. I totally agree. I think that at that point you're almost kind of just writing the story together and you just recite the lines that are off the page. But yeah, for a group dynamic in a typical D&D, like everybody just walks up to the table once a week or so. I think I would agree that the 2 to 5 limit is a pretty good limit to set for any new DMs out there. So we kind of talked about some of the worst cases, but what are some things that maybe a new player could maybe look to try to make adjustments if they feel like they've had a bad session? We've kind of gone over like what makes a good session, what makes a bad session. The new players might experience one of those bad sessions. What are some key takeaways that you can kind of give them as advice to kind of come back and say, hey, maybe next time try this, or in between this session, the bad session that you've had, and the next session, try to do this. Pickles, do you have any examples of things that you might do if you walked out of a session not feeling like it was the greatest?
Well, that's tough because I guess it depends on where the problem is coming from. And for most of my situations, it's do I do I rain on the parade of the party that isn't really fitting for me? There have been a few games where it's like they're clearly enjoying this. I'm not, so I'm just gonna walk away. I think that's always something that can be appropriate to do. If you're just not having fun and everybody else is, you don't need to ruin it for them. But when you can, you may as well just talk to the storyteller. If it's something like I wasn't a big fan of this, I don't think I got enough spotlight, or I think I was hogging the spotlight, and I felt bad afterwards. Just talking to your DM can really alleviate a lot of issues as long as they're reasonable. Otherwise, I guess it gets harder when the issue is yourself. Like, what did you not like? What could you do that would make it more fun for you? Would you prefer not to do a silly voice and just kind of talk as a person? Or did you want to lean more into that? Did you want to lean more into being an interesting character and you had a bad time because you were just plain old yourself? It really depends on where the problem is coming from, but either look into yourself or talk to your storyteller, really.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, yeah, talking with your DM is always something that can help. But also, yeah, you do have to isolate what is the source of that issue. I mean, Rath, have you had any instances where we've had like maybe something that needs to be talked about after a session or anything like that?
I specifically have a discussion called Under the Table, where after episodes we can discuss all the behind the scenes content and people can address things like, hey, this worked, hey, this didn't work. Personally, and this is a flex, we haven't had a lot of that in my recent campaign. Any issues, I should say, that have been like, hey, this really didn't work. It's been, hey, I'd like to see more of this, or I'd like to see this maybe differently or whatever, but there's never, luckily, we haven't faced an issue currently that is, I'm fingers crossed, that has been this big, but I've been at this for a while and I have experienced it in the past. And I think really it comes down to exactly what Pickles said. It's either an issue with yourself, which I've experienced, or it's an issue with the DM, which I've experienced. If it's an issue with other players, which I've also experienced, I still think the right answer is to go to your DM, which I've done. Pickles was my DM in a game. I had issues with the other players. It wasn't working. So then I went to Pickles because I needed to figure out if it was them that needed to change or me that needed to change or a parting of ways. Because like Pickles said, maybe this just doesn't work for me. Everyone else is enjoying it. And I've experienced that where I think it was a 3-player game. I was one of the players. So that leaves me in the minority as the other two, the majority, were having fun with the game and I was not. And so I think, like Pickles said, you approach your DM because your DM at the end of the day is the teacher, is the adult in the room, right? Who
Sometimes
should be, who should handle the situation, can learn. Your DM can't do anything if they don't know what's going on, if you don't talk to your DM. So I think, like Pickles said, that's your best first step. Then once you approach your DM and say the other two players are having a good time, whatever they're doing isn't working for me, I approach my DM and he's like, just change yourself. Then it comes back to you. You can either change yourself or understand that this isn't for you. If your DM says, hey, that's a really good point. Like, say I went to the DM and I was like, hey, I didn't feel like I got spotlight in that game. I feel like, with these 6 players, it's really hard for me to get a word in. And then your DM does something to change that. That's up to your DM. It's not up to the other players. It's not up to you to get more spotlight. In the end, it comes back to your DM. I know some DMs will set a timer or a couple different things that people will do. We can talk about that another time, but that's on your DM's plate. Now, the other, like Pickles said, the other option is it's you. I've been in games before King's Crossing. I was at a time where I didn't feel like I was a good player. I literally talked to Pickles and I was like, hey, I want to play in your campaign that you're about to run, but I want you to know I'm not feeling like a very strong player right now. You remember this, Pickles? Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't feel like maybe I'm just not a good addition to a team. I feel like I'm the odd man out. Maybe I'm standoffish. Maybe my thoughts on how a game should go are different than others. So I want to work on that. Can we work on that? And approach your DM, tell them, because then they can do one of two things. They can either think, hey, we can work with that, or maybe this isn't the best group for you. And so I would love to give the listeners more content, but really I'm just going to say, listen to what Pickles said and do that.
I mean, it is kind of the good fallback position of any like player is to talk with your DM about it. Like, you guys outside, away from the table, you guys can talk about anything you guys want to, and to try to improve, to make sure that the next time you're walking into that game, everybody should be having a good time. Is the goal of every single session, is that everybody wants to have fun, be engaged at the table, and feel like they're making a contribution to the effort. And the DM can kind of help kind of pinpoint where some of that is, or at least give you an idea of like if this is the game for you or not, like Rath was saying. So with that, I think we've kind of covered some great topics here. We covered things that we think make a good session with the players being able to have their own role in writing that story, as well as players coming to the table with attention and being able to give their all to the story while getting rewarded for doing so by the DMs and the campaign. Now, to close things out, we would like to test our RPG knowledge as a little bit of fun here at the end of the podcast here. So I'm going to hand it over to Rath here. We're going to play a little bit of a game here. Have some fun with our TTRPG knowledge.
So really, we're going to be testing Pickles' RPG knowledge. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing what's called an anti-draft. I've seen it around on TikTok. Should be pretty fun. So basically what it is we have a category. Adaece and I have a category that we have made a roster for. Our roster is going to contain 5 slots, and we're going to take turns picking something to put on our roster. For example, if this was, NFL teams, like I could say Seahawks, he could say Steelers, and then Pickles would have to guess what should go on his roster. Which, if he thinks, oh, we're picking, ice cream flavors, he could say mint ice cream, thinking maybe that'll be good on his roster. And then you get to the end of the 5 each, and we allow him to guess what he thinks the roster is. So that's basically the way it's going to work. Adaece and I have our roster category chosen. Pickles, are you ready?
I think so.
Okay. I'm going to kick this off. It'll go to Adaece next, and then we'll give Pickles his first chance at guessing. So for the first one on my roster, I have chosen a suspicious puddle as the first item to go on my roster. A suspicious puddle. Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty good. I think it works. Right?
That's really good. I agree.
I was pretty proud of that one. I was creative.
That's a good one. I'll have to go with my first one on my roster is ribs.
Ribs. That's true.
Ribs.
That's true. Yeah, I would give you that. Okay. So you have a suspicious puddle and ribs.
And I'm supposed to make a guess of what your topic is.
You don't need to guess the topic. You just need to guess the first thing that goes on your roster.
Okay. Oh, so I'm making my own roster here. Okay. Suspicious puddle and ribs. This seems ominous, so I'm going to say a patch of mold.
I could see it. Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Actually, that's a great guess. Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I know the topic.
There's no way you know it off one. There's no way.
I think I know the topic.
Let's see. I'm going into my second one.
Do I get to purchase
a
guess
at the end? We got to play the game.
Okay.
We can't end the game after one round.
I'm just trying to show the audience how smart I am.
Let's give it to Adaece and then me, just so that way we kind of bounce back.
The second thing on my roster is a cult.
A cult?
A cult.
Colt 45 in 268.
No, I think it's CULT.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
CULT.
Not like a horse,
yes.
right? Okay.
Not like a horse. No.
Like a religious
Colt.
cult.
Okay. I could see it. I think maybe.
I can see it.
Kind of tough in. Okay. Situational. Yeah.
All right,
Mine. I've got two good ones I'm looking at. I'm gonna go with discarded clothes.
Oh,
Like a
Yep,
like a pile
certainly.
of discarded clothes is gonna be my second. Pickles, what's your second?
I'm gonna have to go with a tribe of kobold.
I don't know about that.
That one might not. fit.
Might not fit.
Situational, maybe. That's okay. Nah. My third then.
Yeah, sure. Just Mad Mind. I don't even know the topic.
My third, I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna throw a zinger out there. I'm gonna go with chains on the wall. Yeah.
Ooh.
I'll go.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think.
All
Yeah.
right, yeah. Every now and then. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Then my third is going to be drinks of unknown origin.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's
Everywhere.
easy. So we've got chains on the wall, drinks of unknown origin, a suspicious puddle,
A cult.
occult, discarded clothes, and what was your first one?
Ribs.
Ribs. That's right, of course. Ribs. What is your guess so far? Pickles, you have
Patch of mold.
patch of mold and a clan of kobold,
Tribe.
a tribe of
Tribe
kobold. Okay, right. Okay, your third.
Well, now I'm not so sure that I know what it is because I thought
I'm
a tribe of
Sure, you don't.
underground dwelling kobolds seemed like they could fit here.
I don't think so. I don't think it was a good guess.
Well, you're hurtful. Okay, so my next guess will be prisoners.
I can see it. Some people would think so.
Like
Some
they
people
might
would
be
think
being
so.
experimented
Some
on.
people might think it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people might think so.
Yeah, they might be being experimented on. Well,
Okay.
I'll give it to you. It's not strong, but it's on the list.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright.
Cool.
That's over to Adaece then. Your fourth.
All right. So my fourth one is going to be crabs.
Oh, of course. Of
All over the
course,
place.
crabs.
All over the
Oh,
place.
how did I not think of that? That's a good one. That's a good one. Crabs. That's a good one. My fourth, I think he's right up there on just scratched furniture.
Oh, yep.
Right? Like, of course, yeah. Like scratched furniture.
Would like glassware from like an alchemy set be there?
Glassware would. I think.
You've got I mean it's on the board. Yeah.
I think we would give them that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not a strong option. Again,
Yeah.
it's an option.
Okay. Give me your final ones then.
All right. My fifth and final.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I've got two good ones. But I'm gonna go with a secret passage, secret tunnel, if you will.
Secret tunnels.
Of course. A secret tunnel, I think, is gonna be my fifth and final. I think I'm ending on a strong note. I think I've got a solid roster here.
I think I'm going to end with wet caverns.
Right up there with mine, yeah. But what? Oh no. Okay. Wet caverns would definitely, of course. Yeah, that one took me a second. Okay, wet caverns and a secret tunnel. Pickles, for your fifth and final.
I'm gonna go with stalagmites.
No. Hopefully, that would be terrible. No.
That would be rough.
They're the worst. Well, real quick to recap for everyone that's watching, these should be on screen, I hope. But I have a suspicious puddle, chains on wall, discarded clothes, scratched furniture, and a secret tunnel. Adaece, you have.
And I have wet caverns, crabs, drinks of unknown origin, ribs, and occult.
God, man, you've got a pretty strong roster too. Okay, and then Pickles, you have a tribe of kobold, a patch of mold, alchemy set, stalagmites,
Prisoners.
and prisoners. Okay. What is your guess on what our category is?
Initially, I was thinking it's like a cave of some kind. That's why I went with Tribe of Kobolds, because I thought you were talking about stuff that would be inside of a cave or maybe a dungeon, and then that started to change to maybe it's like a mad scientist or like mad alchemist like dungeon, because he said a chain on the wall, and I was like, well, this is spooky, and the suspicious puddle and wet cavern make me think it's a dungeon of some kind. But then Raths all make me think it's a sexual euphemism or something, and clothes on the floor, drinks of unknown origin, just like.
So your final guess is?
I think it's stuff you would find in a dungeon.
You were close.
Close.
You were
Very
close.
close. You got half of it.
It's things you would find in a cave dungeon that you would also find in a brothel.
Oh. Prisoners, come on.
Wouldn't work. I was like, I mean, some people might view them that way.
But there could be a tribe of kobold running a brothel.
That's why I said maybe situational if you're in a kobold town.
Glassware.
Stalagmites didn't work. I don't think you won any points for that. But a patch of mold worked.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That was good. You got me there.
Yeah. So there's the game. That's anti-draft.
That's fun.
All right. And with that, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to drop a like and a subscribe down if you enjoyed this content. For more exclusive content, feel free to stop by our Patreon. That's going to be linked with the socials down in the description below. Again, I'm Adaece. I'm here with my co-host Rath and Pickles, and this has been DiceBound.
Pew, 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 pew.
Pew, 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 pew.
Oh, my guns aren't loaded.